So there was a shooting today in Minnesota. Unfortunately, this happens all too frequently in the USA, and it's hard to talk about it because people don't want to talk about this stuff. And this has been going on for just far too long. I do want to mention it though because it kind of coincides with other things that we've been talking about in the news lately, and I'll explain. So first, it was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Um, Says two children, I guess, have been killed, age 8 and 10, and then 17 people injured. And they were at a Catholic school. I guess they were at mass. They've identified the shooter. The shooter is no longer with us. The shooter had just saying, a rifle, shotgun, and a pistol. So, multiple weapons. The FBI is looking into it. I mean, Well, part of good news is there are people injured, but they're going to survive. I'm just reading through it with you guys, and I think what's frustrating about this stuff, and if you want to go through all the details, you can. But my first thing was like, how long has this been going on? So Columbine, that was 1999. I just looked it up. It's so long ago. I mean, it's what are we, 26 years now of this stuff, and these days kids have to do like shooting drills. We never did that when I was a kid. Like we never did that. And for those of you who have kids, you probably know this because I heard about the shooting drill stuff for the first time. I don't know, a few years ago, and I was like, what? But I understand because this is a big problem. I want to point this out, and like I said, if you want to go through the details of all this stuff, you can of the today's shooting. I was looking at this, and you can find different stuff on this, but like leading causes of death for young people. When you start to go through it, like as kids get older, say 10 to 14, it's well, the way they say it is they say accidents, unintentional injury, right? And you can go through other ages as well. I mean, because I'm not sure how they're classifying this stuff, but I'm just throwing things on the screen, right? So you either have your health status, like smoking, alcohol, this kind of stuff, obesity, access to healthcare. Again, these are leading causes of death, and it says accidents, unintentional injuries. So it's the leading cause of death for, and then you have homicide on there, and then um, someone who decides not to be with us. I mean, you guys know certain words you can't really say on YouTube. But that's among ages 15 to 19. It's a real problem, and I think in my opinion, until USA takes this stuff seriously, uh, it's really hard to tell us. Americans are very hypocritical to talk about anything else, and I'll for example, for the Trumpers, right? For Trump, they want to blame everything on illegal immigrants, and they want to call the military in cities and say, oh, look how violent everything is, etc. But I always point to the same thing is, if you're really serious about, safety for your people, just basic safety, just your basic safety in USA, you would address this kind of stuff, right? And like I said, I know a lot of people already know this stuff, and it's kind of a an old thing to talk about, but because it's been going on since 1999, right? And you can talk about other things, right? Because that's just the school shooting stuff. You just want to talk about gun violence as a whole, and you say it's been going on for decades, right? And just to compare to the USA to the world, you guys can see this stuff. The likelihood of dying from gun violence is significantly higher in the US compared to other high income countries, with the US having the highest firearm mortality rates among these nations. For instance, the US gun homicide rate is 26 times higher than that of other high income countries, while the US rate is lower than in some Latin American countries with high rates of physical violence. It is an outlier compared to its peer nations regarding firearm violence. I think you guys already know this stuff, but I just wanted to bring it up in case, just as a reminder how bad it is in USA. Um, this is also something that came out last year. Key facts about guns, Americans and guns, and this is from the Pew Research. And these numbers are, I know there's a lot of guns in USA, but it's actually quite crazy how many. So it says about about 4 in 10 adults say they live in a household with a gun. 4 in 10. So I guess almost half of American households have a gun. So like there's really a lot, including 32% who say they personally own one. So what, 40% of people live in a household with a gun, and then 32% people say they own one. So it's more men than women. Men personally own a gun, 40%. And then there's another 5% in there don't own a gun, but someone else in their household does. You actually see right here, it's interesting when you break it down to white gun owners are the biggest population. I mean, you can see right there. So I guess the way you would say this would be, how you would read this is 38% of white people have a gun. Is that how you would read this? Personally own a gun? Yeah. And black people, 24% own. Hispanic, 20% own. Asian, 10% own. I don't know, there's an asterisk there, but these are the ages. So this is actually kind of interesting also. Gun ownership is tends to be larger with older crowd. So, I mean, you could read that any number of ways, and I wonder if this means if younger people aren't buying them anymore, or they just, I don't know. I'm just showing you the numbers, and if you guys have explanations for that, I'd be curious your thoughts on this one. This is kind of interesting too. So the way you read this is, and just be nice about it, but just, I mean, the way you read it is the more education you have, the less likely you are to have a gun. And you can right there. This is the stats. So, and you can read that any number of ways. Is it because if you have more education that you live in a safer environment, so you don't feel like you need one? I'm just saying that's, for example, could be that. It could be other things. Could be a regional thing also. If people who are less educated happen to live in a certain region of the USA that tend to have more guns. Any number of ways you could read it, but just, the more, if you have post-grad education, right? So beyond the bachelor's, then you're less likely to have a gun. Some college and high school are less, you're more likely. This isn't the numbers here. Rural people are more likely to have a gun, 47% ownership. Urban, 20%, a lot less. And then Republicans are more likely to have a gun. And you can see it all in the numbers. It's all in the numbers. It's a important issue also to mention that just from owning a gun doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna go do a school shooting. Just make that really clear, and because people get sensitive about these topics, right? Because right, so this does happen frequently in the USA, but doesn't mean everyone who owns a gun does these things. Make that clear. And I think you guys all know this, and I wish we could just have honest conversations about this stuff. I think that's the hardest thing, is because there's a gun lobby out there in USA who profits off of these things, right? Anytime there's a shooting, hey, you need to go buy more of this stuff. You need to go buy more bullets and protect yourself, etc., right? So at the end of the day, this ends up being about weapons sales. The same way that, as I talked about in prior videos, sort of I've been thinking about it, much of what the USA wants to do with the sovereign wealth fund or relationship with other countries is to sell more weapons. It's basically arms, if you want to call it that. Like I just read in the news, here in Korea, it was reported that the Americans are trying to sell Korea more B-2 bombers. And I don't think Korea's going to buy any, but that was literally in the news. That's what Americans are basically trying to sell bombers, and, hey, we need to give Americans jobs and build more weapons, and other countries, you need to, buy our weapons. So that's sort of why you get this perpetual wars, be it abroad or perpetual, you could call it a war at home, because there's profit in this stuff, right? It's a whole industry of selling weapons. And you could make the case that this is really the industry that controls USA. You could make that case, or part of it, right? The military industrial complex, because it's related to that. And you keep people fighting each other and etc. So, and I don't talk about this stuff every single day, but I do see it. Just want to mention the Gaza situation. And why am I bringing that up? Is because for me, this is just basic stuff. Like, we should be concerned about our children no matter where they live, no matter which state they live, no matter which country they live. That should be, a A1 priority. But just the way things are structured, the way our, the world works, people are, I don't know. It's and for those of you who have ever been to other countries, because for Americans, because people always say, "Oh, Chris, we need more guns," and that's exactly what we need. Just need more, then we'll all feel safer. But when you go to other places, actually, you'd be surprised. Many of the police don't carry weapons. Um, it's just safe. It's just safe. And then you'll hear, and you never know if these are real people or just bots, because there are bot chats everywhere, bot comments everywhere. You never know about this stuff, but they'll say, "Oh, what about cars and knives and stuff like that? They're dangerous too. It's all about the person behind it." But it's just like there's crazy people in everywhere in the world. That's just the reality. There people with mental issues everywhere in the world. But just think about it this way: is if you give someone with a mental problem for any number of reasons, and that's a whole other issue. Why people do what they do. But if someone has a knife compared to someone has three weapons here, was it a rifle, shotgun, and a pistol? You can do a lot more harm to others with three weapons that clearly hurt a lot of people, right? And for anyone who ever says, "Oh, well, it's the person, not the weapon," well, okay, fine. I'll take the guns. You take the knife, and we'll see who wins in the fight. We'll see who can do more damage. I mean, it's obvious. That's why it's a dishonest argument to ever say that gun control doesn't matter. And if you want to talk about mental health, sure, I completely agree. Fund the schools, right? Take this stuff seriously. Have a counselor everywhere. Take this stuff seriously. If you want to talk about health, mental health at work, absolutely have a counselor. And and the same kind of people who say, "Oh, well, we just all need more guns. That'll make us all better." They're the kind of people that make fun of counselors and make fun of education and stuff like that. It's frustrating to deal with this stuff in USA, and just my personal opinion, and I know it's an unhappy topic. It is. But in my personal opinion, this is why you want to take care of yourself, take care of yourself financially, uh, put you and your family in a place that's safe. And I'll define that however you can define that however you feel safe, right? And that will often involve moving to a place that is safe. And like I said, I'll let you guys decide that. The problem is like when people see this in USA, and it's like, God, I can't even send my kids to Catholic school, right? It's anywhere safe, and that's where, I think with these people were mass, right? They're basically at church. It's really disturbing. I'm sure you guys know these things. And then you feel like there's nowhere safe in USA. I lived in multiple states in USA. I really know how it is all over the USA. I really know. And it's hard to explain that there is a world outside the USA that is not like this. Again, among developed nations, USA is 26 times, was it say 26 times more likely to have gun violence. So you guys already know these arguments and stuff like that. I just wanted to mention some stuff because I don't ignore it. I just can't talk about it on a daily basis. But unfortunately, this happens in USA every day, and it's not just school shootings; it's all kinds of gun violence. And for me, it makes much of USA unlivable. I'm just telling you the truth on that. And it's sad to see, and I wish there was more political outcry to address this issue properly. So I do appreciate your time watching, guys, and I'll catch you next video.